The House will come to order. The pledge will be led by Kyle Fleming, University of Denver, Denver, Colorado.
Good morning, everyone. Will you please join me in reciting the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Kohler, please call the roll.
Representatives Arndt. Becker J. Becker K. Brown. Buck. Buckner. Carver. Conti. Corum. Representative Corum. Court. Danielson. Del Grosso. Dorr. Representative Dorr. There you go. Duran. Esgar. Everett. Fields. Foote. Garnett. Janal. Hamner. Humphrey. Joshi. Kagan. Representative Kagan.
Representative Kagan excused.
Kaiser. Klingenschmidt. Representative Klingenschmidt. Kraft Tharp. Landgraf. Lawrence. Lebsock. Representative Lebsock. Lee. Lontine. Lundeen. McCann. Melton. Mitch Bush. Moreno. Navarro. Neville. Nordberg. Pabon. Pedersen. Primavera. Priola. Rankin. Ransom. Rosenthal. Rupe. Ryden. Sane. Salazar. Sias. Singer. Tate. Thurlow. Tyler. Van Winkle. Vigil. Willett. Williams. Representative Williams. Wilson. Winholz. Winter. Young. Madam Speaker.
Here. Okay. Excuse me. With 64 present, 1 excused, quorum is present. Representative Lontine.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and good morning, members, and happy Friday. Madam Speaker, I move that the reading of the Journal of Thursday, March 5th, 2015, be dispensed with and that it be approved as corrected by the chief clerk.
You have heard the motion, which I doubt seriously, that the journal be adopted as corrected by the chief clerk. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. It was close, but motion carries. Now, members, may I have your attention before I have to interrupt somebody? We're into announcements and introductions. We need some extra order. Take your side conversations outside, please. Representative Primavera.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to remind members of Public Health Care and Human Services, we do have 2 bills up today upon adjournment. Senate Bill 116 with Representative Garnett and Senate Bill 128 with Representative Landgraf and myself, so stay tuned.
Representative Rosenthal, did you have an announcement? Are there further announcements and introductions? We're about ready to move to the next item of business, which is Mr. Thurlow, Representative Thurlow.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, I have 2 guests today. I have Anna and Ella Mestis from Littleton High School and Wildwood Elementary School visiting us today. They're in the balcony. And then we also have the Grand Junction Area Chamber of Commerce, 40 to 50 people down the sidelines in the balcony. They're everywhere. Thank you very much for those of you that attended the dinner last night. And give a big hand to the Grand Junction Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Representative Thurlow. That's a $2 fine. Representative Willett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Kind of to dovetail on that, we also have representatives from somewhere in here, the Delta Chamber of Commerce and the Fruita Chamber of Commerce in my district. Thank you for being here, and thanks for the dinner last night.
Thank you for your $2 fine, Representative Willett. Are there further announcements and introductions? Seeing none, the next order of business is third reading, final passage of bills. Madam Majority Leader? We're going to lay it. Can we do this one now? Okay. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1173.
House Bill 1173 by Representatives Mitch Bush and Rankin, also Senator Todd, concerning a requirement that motor vehicles have certain traction equipment when driving on the Interstate 70 Mountain Corridor.
Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move for the passage of House Bill 1173 on third reading and final passage.
The motion before us is the passage of House Bill 1173. Members, please take your seats. We are about to vote on third reading and final passage. Mr. Kohler, is there any discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Court and Representative Del Grosso. Close the machine. With 43 ayes, 21 noes, and 1 excused, House Bill 1173 is passed. Co-sponsors. Close the machine. The next order of business is General Order's second reading of bills. Representative Danielson. You have heard the motion. You've heard the motion. If there are no objections, Representative Danielson will take the chair.
come to order. With your unanimous consent, the bills will be read by title unless there is a request for reading a bill at length. Committee amendments will not be read unless requested as they are printed and in your bill folders. Floor amendments will be shown on the screen and on your iPads and not read unless requested. Bills will be laid over upon the motion of the majority leader. The coat rule is relaxed. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1175.
House Bill 1175 by Representative Rosenthal, Senator Stedman, concerning a prohibition on conversion therapy by a licensed mental health provider.
Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1175, and there's no committee report.
To the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I rise to ask for your support for House Bill 1175. This is a ban on gay conversion therapy. I know that this is difficult for some of you, a deeply personal subject. But that's exactly what being gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender is. Deeply personal and part of who you are. It is how you were born, and yes, there is no changing it. No matter how much you want to, or how much you want someone to help you do it. If you are under 18, a child, and you are looking for that help from a mental health professional, House Bill 1175 would prevent state licensed therapists from practicing gay conversion therapy. Simply bringing state licensing standards in line with the rest of the state profession. Homosexuality was removed as a mental illness from the DSM in 1973, yet some therapists still practice it. This is terribly damaging to children. This is not a radical bill, nor untested. This has been passed in New Jersey, including signed by Governor Chris Christie, and also is on the books in California. The bill has support from a number of Colorado mental health professionals, including Colorado Children's Hospital, Colorado Behavioral Health Council, Colorado Psychological Association, and others. Members, I ask for you to vote for this bill, House Bill 1175. Let's support the children, allow them to grow up as well-adjusted, happy kids that they should need to be. Thank you very much.
Representative Del Grosso.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Rosenthal, thank you for bringing a bill forward that I know you're very passionate about. And I've had several conversations with several of the groups that are in support of the bill, and I've kind of voiced my concerns with the legislation to them, and it's they might seem kind of technical, but I think in a way that they kind of add to where I think that this bill could technically be problematic. And when I look through the definitions and I'm reading through the definitions, I'm trying to figure out at what point is the line that a therapist cannot cross. And what I say is, you can provide acceptance and support, but you can't actually try to change somebody's feelings. And what I'm wondering is, at what point would a therapist be considered they're crossing that line? And I'm trying to envision that if I was a therapist and I'm sitting in there with a teen that comes into my office and we're talking about, school and trouble with other kids and just life issues and talking about a bunch of stuff, and then all of a sudden the conversation starts turning towards, just kind of what my sexual preference may or may not be, and kind of where I'm kind of on the spectrum. And as the counselor, we start trying to dive into that. I guess at what point and what guardrails are there for protections for that therapist? Because what I'm worried is maybe the therapist thinks they're providing just acceptance and support, but maybe that kid walks out of there and then suddenly goes, geez, were they really trying to push me in one way or the other? And now all of a sudden this therapist, who was, I think, in no way trying to cross a line, is now all of a sudden losing their license and basically having their career ruined over them not actually trying to cross a line. So I guess, and I know Representative Singer has a background in social work and some stuff, and maybe he can shed some light on that. But when I brought that issue up to some of the groups that are actually in favor of it, they actually didn't really have an answer for me on that either. And what I'm actually worried about is if I'm a therapist and I don't see that there's a clear line, anytime a conversation when I'm doing therapy with somebody turns to sexual orientation, I am not going to touch that conversation with a 10-foot pole because I don't know where that line is. And so in a roundabout way, that kid will actually never get the full therapy that they need because there's certain conversations in certain areas that we can never go because as a therapist, I might be scared to go down that road. So I guess, can you point to what exactly is that line to where you can, what you can say, what you cannot say, where a therapist is not getting themselves in trouble?
Assistant Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Representative Del Grosso. Thank you for the question. Just quickly, members, I know this conversation is personal and deeply passionate for some folks. Folks, this is about sexual orientation, not about sexual preference. To say sexual preference means that you simply prefer, that it can be changed, that this is about orientation, for one. And two, Representative Del Grosso, to specifically point to the bill, it does allow for a therapist or anyone that provides these services to provide acceptance, support, and understanding for the facilitation of individuals' coping, social support, and identity exploration. So what you just mentioned about supporting someone who is questioning or supporting someone who is having doubts is allowed for in this bill.
Minority Leader Del Grosso.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Moreno, thanks for that. And when I'm reading through the definitions, and maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but when it talks about a therapist, they can actually talk about someone's feelings and the way that you can offer acceptance and support of somebody that has attractions or a sexual orientation towards someone of the same sex. But I don't see if somebody has preferences the other way that is the same protections as well. So am I reading that bill, am I reading it wrong, or is it really, as a therapist, it's okay if I counsel somebody towards a same-sex attraction, but it's not okay, then it's not okay if I want to counsel somebody back the other way? Am I reading the bill wrong, or is it only go one way on that?
Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Representative Del Grosso. This bill relates to gay conversion therapy. It doesn't relate to helping heterosexual children feeling heterosexual feelings. That is already, in practice. So I guess I don't see how that relates to my bill at all.
Minority Leader Del Grosso.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Representative Rosenthal, what I'm saying is if I'm a teenager and I'm coming in for counseling and I'm having issues, and then the conversation turns to sexual orientation and whether or not I have attractions towards men or women or whatever, the way I read the bill, that it's okay for the therapist that if we want to start having conversations about sexual orientations, it would be okay for me as a therapist to have a conversation with a teenager if they wanted to have a same-sex attraction or if they had a same-sex attraction, but it would not be okay for me to have a conversation with that teenager. Gosh, it looks like you like men more than girls, or you like girls more than men, and if I possibly look like I'm steering them in a certain direction, then I'm somehow crossing that line. to me, it looks like it's okay for me to counsel towards same-sex attraction, but not the other. Is that the case?
Representative Singer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And first of all, Mr. Minority Leader, even though I understand that neither of us are counselors or psychologists, I think you make an excellent family counselor, seeing as how you've been able to keep your caucus together and been on message. But with that being said, what we're looking at here is a practice, and a practice either called conversion or reparative therapy that the professional associations have previously recognized and is an accepted form of therapy and no longer recognize it as such. And groups such as the American Counseling Association have provided guidance and ethical guidelines related to what can and cannot be said or should and should not be said in terms of an ethical breach. And if there was such a practice as what you're talking about, then I think we could bring that up in another bill. There's nothing specifically related to the question you're asking, because that's not the problem. And if that was happening, I think we should know about it. We should have that conversation. But we are here to talk about conversion or reparative therapy as a recognized practice, and when it is and is not appropriate. And what this bill is saying is that practice is no longer competent or no longer aligned with professional standards for these professions.
Minority Leader Del Grosso.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Singer, a family counselor, I think if you talk to my wife, she might have a difference of opinion on that. But marriage counseling. I guess what I'm trying to say is if I'm a teenager and I come in and we start and I'm having issues at school, I'm having issue with my grades, I'm having all different kinds of issues, and then the talk turns to sexual orientation, and I come to you and say, Mr. Therapist, you know what? I have attractions both ways. I'm not sure. I'm kind of confused. And the way I read the bill, and I could be reading the bill totally wrong, but the way I read the bill is, and I get, we're trying to go after somebody that maybe highlights themselves as I'm a conversion therapist, and come to me and I'll change your kid and I'll set them straight. I get that's what we're trying to go after, but I'm also trying to go after the possibility of unintended consequence that maybe I'm not the therapist that highlights that's where I'm at. I'm just the therapist that's just trying to help your kids and all different other kinds of life issues, but the conversation turns to sexual orientation. And now me as the kid, I kind of say, hey, I'm not really sure where I'm at. I'm kind of having attractions both ways. What I'm saying is the way I read the bill, it would be legal for me to, if you're confused, to talk to you about going towards same sex, but it would be illegal for me to counsel you towards an opposite sex attraction. And what I'm worried about is if that line is kind of blurred, that me as the counselor, I would be scared to ever go down that road and have that conversation. Hey, we'll talk about your grades all day long. We'll talk about if you're getting bullied. We'll talk about, you and your sister don't get along or whatever it is. But when it comes to your orientation, gosh, I don't even want to have that conversation. And that might be a big part of your life. But if I go down that road, that I could potentially be crossing a line somewhere and I'm going to lose my license. And that's what I'm trying to make sure doesn't happen. I mean, I get the overall premise of why we're there, but I think sometimes we try to cast a broad net, and then there's sometimes these unintended consequences. And I want to make sure people aren't being unfairly caught up in that net.
Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Del Grosso. I'm afraid that I think your analysis is off base here, because what we're talking about when you were discussing someone who's not sure of their sexuality and maybe they a child is starting to be attracted to boys or attracted to girls, and they're not really sure. And it's possible they're attracted to both. That's bisexual. And so, according to this bill, it says specifically that seek to change. It would be illegal under this bill for a therapist to say to this potentially bisexual youth, you should be something other than who you are. You should be heterosexual. Okay? And for example, and so that would be illegal under this bill. The point of the bill is to allow a therapist to help the youth pursue acceptance, support, understanding, facilitating their coping, social support, identity exploration, helping the youth explore their identity, who they are, not who the therapist thinks they are or who the therapist thinks they should be. This has to do with converting them to someone who they are not. That is what this bill does.
Representative Conti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members in committee, we heard some very compelling testimony on this issue. Testimony that deals with a fundamental, inalienable right that is guaranteed to us, a right not given by men, but given by God to pursue happiness. We all have that fundamental, inalienable right. This deals directly and goes directly to that heart. Does that right exist insofar as it doesn't infringe on anyone else to a minor? Does a minor have the right to come into a therapist and say, I feel the attraction towards, I have unwanted sexual attractions. I know that this is not going to take me down a road that I want to go insofar as my life's path. I know that I want to have my own biological children. I love children. I see them as a blessing. I see them as a joy, a source of joy in life. Therefore, I know that this is not a path that I want to pursue. Can you help me learn to set this attraction on the shelf that would allow me to not change it, not diminish it, but just set it on the shelf so that I can pursue a path that I know is more in keeping with my ultimate goal in life? Under this bill, whether it's the will of this patient or not, their will is discarded. You may be under 18, but you no longer have the right to pursue happiness in this arena. So sad, too bad. This option is closed to you. And if a therapist wants to honor your wishes to pursue happiness in this way, they could risk their license. I ask for a no vote on this bill.
Representative Singer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If the point of therapy was to increase happiness, I think we would talk about different licensure standards for counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists, licensed clinical social workers, licensed marriage family therapists. But that's not what this profession is solely about. What they practice is based in research, and we are talking about professional standards for a profession that is asking for this guardrail. And the reason that they're asking for this is based in numerous studies, but I will just quote from the American Counseling Association, who looked at the peer-reviewed journals on conversion therapy and looked at their effectiveness. It said, we did not find any longitudinal studies conducted to follow the outcomes for those individuals who have engaged in this type of treatment. We conclude that research published in peer-reviewed counseling journals indicates that conversion therapy may harm clients. So at best, it does nothing. At worst, it may harm people. And so what this profession is saying is this is no longer something that we want as part of our profession. If individuals wish to speak to their aunt, their uncle, their pastor, anybody else, that's a different story and a different conversation and a different bill. But this is holding true to what a profession is asking for based on the research and the science. No more than we would allow a child, regardless of how much they wanted to see a veterinarian for their medical care, we wouldn't allow that child to see it. We wouldn't allow that veterinarian to complete that practice. That being said, it sounds spurious, but those kinds of things can and do happen, which is why we have licenses in the first place. This is about licensing a profession to allow them to do what the research has borne out.
Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There was a statement made about, you know, I want to grow up someday, I want to have kids, I want to have a family. You can still do that. There are many lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender families that have children, and they're happy. They're pursuing their happiness. So let's support those families. Let's support that notion that we have great diversity in our state. Thank you.
Representative Conti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I drilled down on this point in committee. Again, we're talking about the will of the patient. Even if it is the will of the patient, we heard testimony from a counselor who's counseled over 1,500 people with unwanted sexual desires. 25 to 35% of those were minors. They came in saying, this is not my will, and that's what we're drilling down on. The will of the patient being ignored. No longer can they pursue that with a counselor, because that also falls underneath the umbrella in this bill. It makes no distinguishing between the patient's will or not. Period. It's disbarred.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1175. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. 1175 passes. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1202.
House Bill 1202 by Representative Singer concerning the ability of a licensing authority to reissue expired alcohol beverage licenses.
I'm sorry. Okay. Representative Singer.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I move House Bill 1202. And there is an amendment. There's no committee report. And I move Amendment L003.
Amendment L003 is properly displayed. To the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amendment L003 is a technical change that talks about making sure that we're talking about the expired license renewal as well as reissuance applications. Since the bill of the title talks about the authority to reissue expired alcohol licenses, this is a good technical amendment, and I encourage an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L003. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The amendment is adopted. To the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill for me is about constituent outreach. In the last year, I've had two constituents that have dealt with this issue, where they've had a license and it's been revoked because of a paperwork error. This happened in the Pump House in Longmont, who provides over $10,000 a month in state and local tax revenue. And because of a paperwork error, they had to shut their doors, and our state and our local government had no other recourse. What this bill does is it just puts in discretion, puts in fees instead of revocation, because there's no winners when waiters and waitresses are put out of work. There's no winners when, through only a paperwork error, someone's got to shut their doors. Up in Lyons at Spirit Hound Distillery, the same thing happened because they got their renewal notice during a flood, and they had to shut their doors. Now, fortunately, we were able to find some ways to get their doors back open, but it shouldn't take an act of the legislature to do this on the behalf of every business every time this happens. This bill streamlines things for business, gets the doors open for those good actors that are out there, and makes sure that our communities are still kept safe, vibrant. And with that, I ask for an aye vote on House Bill 1202.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1202? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1202. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. To the committee report. Mr. Kohler, will you please read the title of House Bill 1197?
House Bill 1197, Representative Tate, also Senator John, concerning limitations on indemnity obligations in public construction contracts.
Representative Tate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1197 and passage of the Judiciary Committee report.
Thank you. To the Judiciary Committee report.
The Judiciary Committee report reveals a couple of amendments to the original bill that clarified the manner in which disputes can be resolved, and it also clarified some issues in regards to relationships between other members on a construction team. And in addition, I move Amendment L002 to the Judiciary Committee report and ask that it be displayed on the screen.
Amendment L002 is properly displayed. To the amendment.
The amendment further clarifies the manners in which disputes can be managed within a claim environment. The concern originally was that alternative dispute resolution did not include informal processes between the parties, and so language has been added to indicate that as a matter of clarity. And so I ask for an aye vote on the amendment.
Is there any further discussion on L002? Speaker Pro Tem Pabon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Tate, can you tell me, as I look at who the supporters of this bill are, if they're in support of this bill, and did you have a conversation with the public entities that are involved in this bill as well, and whether they support this amendment as well?
Representative Tate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, Representative Pabon, I had extensive discussions with public entities, and they helped inspire the need for this amendment.
Majority Leader Duran.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just so we're clear on this, is there any opposition or any known opposition to this amendment?
Representative Tate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, there is not.
Is there any further discussion on L002? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L002 to the Judiciary report. All those in favor say aye. No. Opposed, no. The amendment is adopted. To the bill. Oh.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sorry, Representative Tate, back to the committee report. Is there any further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the committee report to the Judiciary Committee. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The report is adopted. To the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Currently, public entities and construction-related contracts are prohibited from being indemnified for the public entity's own negligence. This bill clarifies this provision by stating that it also applies to a design contract and to an obligation to pay for the defense of the public entity. The contractor's obligation is limited to the amount of negligence attributed to the contractor and its agents, and the obligation only arises when the amount of the liability for the losses of the third party have been adjudicated, determined by alternative dispute resolution or via mutual agreement between the obligee and obligor. And at this point, I move Amendment L003, please.
Thank you.
Bill.
Amendment L003 is properly displayed to the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a technical change brought to my attention by a major public entity and at their request, and I asked, and has to do with the relationship between the parties in a dispute and the coverage of additional insured. And so I ask for I vote on this amendment. Again, this was brought, technical change at the request of a public entity in the state.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L003? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L003. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. To the bill.
Thank you,
Representative
Madam Chair. At this point, I move
Thank you.
move for passage of House Bill 1197 as amended and ask for your aye vote on the bill as amended.
Speaker Pro Tem Pabon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so, Representative Tate, what this bill does is essentially takes the agreement that is entered into by the contractors and the public entities and essentially says, we, the legislature, know better than you, the contracting parties to this contract, and we're going to prohibit you from entering into specific provisions that otherwise we might negotiate and lower the price of the contract, increase the price of the contract, lower the price of insurance, increase the price of insurance, and we're going to do that for every single public construction contract that exists. And so there's a fundamental concept that we have called freedom of contract. And that is the idea that parties can decide for themselves what is appropriate for their contract. And this essentially does away with that concept. You also mentioned that private entities already have certain restrictions on them, and two wrongs don't make a right. And so I want to make sure I understand that that's your intent here, is to interfere with the freedom of contract between these entities and these design professionals, and that's what this bill does.
Representative Court. Representative Tate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Pabon, I guess from the philosophical sense you are correct, but the matter at hand is that the risk that's being prescribed, the risk transfer being prescribed in the bill is an uninsurable risk. It has to do with the insurance coverage that professional services firms procure in the marketplace and provide. And what we are leveling out here is the fact that professional services firms cannot actually procure insurance for this type of risk like their contractor counterparts can procure with commercial general liability insurance.
Representative Salazar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Pabon, I argued fiercely in favor of this bill because I actually asked for a copy, an example of contracts that private entities were asked to sign by public entities. And in there was a provision that would be struck down as a matter of law if it was a contract between two private entities. And basically what that is a duty to defend. Under private contracts, it's not allowed. You are responsible for your own liability. But in these public contracts, apparently, it is allowed. When we started diving further into the discussion, we asked the individuals who came up who signed such contracts, we asked them, was this a provision in a contract that could be negotiated away? And they said, no, it was a take it or leave it. And as we know from our case law and from our studying at DU Law School and CU Law School, such things are called adhesion contracts. There was no taking away such duty to defend provisions in such contracts. So that being the case, I think that this is one of the most important bills that we're going to hear this legislative session when it comes to helping out small businesses. It is one of the most important bills that we'll hear because these things are already in effect. These things are already being forced upon small businesses. And if we can get rid of it and have the public entity be responsible for its own liability, then they don't have to worry about the insurance part. They don't have to worry about having to cover the liability of an entity. So I ask for a yes vote on this bill.
1 second, Representative Court. Members, could we please pay attention to the conversation at the well? Representative Court.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, this is a really important bill. This is a long time in the making, and there are tons of different entities involved in this bill. And I just want to compliment Representative Tate for having worked very hard with all the different stakeholders because it's a very complex subject, and there was an awful lot of conversation in the Judiciary Committee, and Representative Tate listened to the conversation and has worked on the bill since then and has offered amendments today to improve it based on discussions with various stakeholders. So I just want to compliment him for the work he's done and encourage a yes vote. Thank you.
Representative Dorr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I sat on the committee that heard this bill late into the evening, I believe it was last week, and I came into the committee leaning support, and by the end of the committee hearing was very supportive of this bill, because at the end of the day what this is about is when a government entity, the localities, are part of the negotiating entity for a contract, we want to have fairness and make sure everybody's on sort of the same playing field when it comes to negotiating positions. And today, right now, that's not the case. The government entity, and too many times, is putting language in there that says, take it or leave it. You get this contract or you don't, but you've got to take our language or else we will walk away. And this bill that Representative Tate is brings a level of fairness, equity, and positioning to the negotiation process that allows ultimately a contract to come out so that is in the best interest not only of the parties involved, but in the parties ultimately that will benefit from these activities, which is the people, the taxpayers of Colorado, and I would ask for a yes vote.
You're doing great. Is there any Representative Tate?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just again urge an aye vote on this bill that was passed unanimously in the Judiciary Committee.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1197? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of House Bill 1197. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1197 is passed.
Thank you.
Mr. Kohler, would you please read the title of House Bill 1042?
House Bill 1042 by Representative Foote, also Senator Cook, concerning requiring pre-sentence reports to include information concerning the amount of time a defendant is expected to actually spend in incarceration.
Representative Foote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1042 and the Judiciary Committee report.
Thank you. To the Judiciary report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Judiciary Committee report actually was a strike below, and it has become the bill actually, so I'll just explain the purpose of the bill through the strike below. Members, this bill deals with verbiage that's put into a pre-sentence report that's done when a defendant is, or before a defendant is sentenced, particularly on a felony offense in Colorado district courts. And it provides a lot of information to prosecutors, to defense attorneys, to judges, and to victims if they choose to look at it or if they'd like to look at it. And what this would do, it would provide information along the lines of what the defendant could expect when it comes to a parole eligibility date and eligibility to community corrections, and also what a victim could come to expect in those areas. You can't calculate the amount of time exactly, that's for sure. But what you can do is you can lay out some of the ways that those that are interested can take a look at and be able to understand what a sentence actually can look like, particularly when it comes to early release on the parole eligibility date or release to community corrections. So that describes the strike below as well as the ultimate bill. And also, I will be offering a couple of amendments to the strike below. And Madam Chair, I move L013 to the Judiciary Committee report. Yeah. Yep. Oh, the packet. Yep.
L013 is properly displayed to the amendment. Representative Foote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, when I was working on this bill, there's been a number of changes to the bill because I want to make sure above anything else that I'm technically correct and on the language that's going to be in these pre-sentence investigations. So what this amendment does is it does clean up some of the language to make sure, again, that we are technically correct. One of them is it reduces or gets rid of the word early, which previously would modify release because it's just release rather than early release. It spells out Colorado revised statutes instead of abbreviates them at CRS. It better defines what the inmate locator tool does on the Department of Corrections website. And it also makes clear that it is the probation department rather than the court that transmits a copy of the PSI to the Department of Corrections. The court actually transmits a copy of the minimus, not the pre-sentence investigation. I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L013? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L013 to the Judiciary Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Representative Foote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we are back to the Judiciary Committee report. And I also move L018 to the Judiciary Committee report. I'll try to memorize it next time.
Amendment L018 is properly displayed. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an amendment to the title that better reflects what the bill actually came out to be, particularly after the strike below. Initially, when I was taking a look at this bill, I was looking at seeing if probation could do an actual calculation of time that the defendant could be expected to serve. And this is prior to the defendant being sentenced. And going through that with the Judiciary Department and others, I found that that would be very difficult, of course, and ended up going with just the specific language that we'll put into the PSI. So this amendment better reflects what actually turned out to be in the bill, and I ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Amendment L018? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L018. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. To the committee report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And then finally, I move L012.
Thank you. Amendment L012 is properly displayed before us. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. L012 is the final technical cleanup to the strike below committee report from Judiciary, and it makes clear that this type of, or the language that's in the pre-sentence investigations do not apply to those that are sentenced to the Youthful Offender Services, YOS. And their system is a lot different than the Department of Corrections, so I'm just making clear that it does not apply to those folks, so there's no confusion about that. So I ask for an aye vote.
Representative Kagan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Foote, I'm just a little confused by the amendment. The statement is supposed to go on the pre-sentence report, so we won't know whether the defendant has been sentenced to the Department of the Youth Corrections at that point. So I'm wondering about the timing of this.
Representative Foote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Representative Kagan, what I did is I put this at the end of the quoted material. And so the probation department doesn't have to determine whether or not they're going to be sentenced to YOS. It's at the end of every single quoted material that goes into every single pre-sentence investigation. So it'll be for everybody. Even those that aren't eligible for YOS are still going to see this. Just to be clear that YOS is not part of this.
Is there further discussion on Amendment L012? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of L012. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. To the committee report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And those are all the amendments I have to offer at this point. I ask for an aye vote on the committee report.
Is there further discussion on the committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Judiciary Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. To the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the committee report is now the bill, so I ask for an aye vote on the bill.
Is there further discussion on House Bill 1042? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1042. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1042 is passed. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1191.
House Bill 1191 by Representative Pedersen, also Senator Grantham, concerning the addition of dentists to the Physician Designation Disclosure Act.
Representative Pedersen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1191 and the Health, Insurance, and Environment Committee report.
Thank you. To the Health, Insurance, and Environment Committee report.
I brought an amendment to add some clarifying language, and I ask for your support.
Is there further discussion on the Health, Insurance, and Environment Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Health, Insurance, and Environment Committee report. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The committee report is adopted. To the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. These basic standards help ensure consistency in designing a program for both carriers and providers. The standards protect consumers by ensuring the information they receive is robust and accurate as possible, and I ask for your support.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1191? Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just noticed on the board that Representative Szabo's name was still on the bill, and I figured I'd be kind of remiss if I didn't come and say something on her behalf. So I can't get it to go any lower, but members, this is a very good bill, and I think we should all have an aye vote on this bill. Thank you.
Wow. With that, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1191. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no. House Bill 1191 is passed. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1221.
House Bill 1221 by Representatives Buckner and Fields, also Senator Kerr, concerning parental involvement in child's academic activities.
Representative Buckner.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. I move House Bill 1221 and the Education Committee report.
Thank you. To the Education Committee report.
Madam Chair, thank you very much. This was a friendly amendment that was intended to narrow the scope of the bill, and there were some strikes from previously positions that we held, and so I urge a positive vote on the amendment.
Is there any further discussion on the Education Committee report? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of the Education Committee report. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. The committee report is adopted. To the bill.
To the bill. It's a good bill. Encourages parent engagement. I appreciate the discussion that we had and urge a positive vote for House Bill 1221.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1221? Seeing none, the question before us is Representative Everett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a pleasure serving with you.
You as well.
We heard this bill in committee, and this had huge opposition from the business community. A lot of employers are already doing this. This is a bill that probably should have gone to the business committee because this deals more with business issues and business regulation than actually with education issues.
Representative Fields.
It's okay.
Representative Buckner.
I will note that opposition and ask for a positive vote.
Go? Go for it. No, go ahead.
Representative Lundin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. This bill starts from a very healthy premise that parent engagement improves education. We all know that when parents are engaged in their children's lives, they do better in class and in society. But there is not adequate data coming back from the pre-existing law that, in fact, this bill, this effort to interrupt the relationship between employees and their employer, in fact, is gaining any ground. Most businesses are,
Excuse me, Representative Lundin. Members, can we have some attention paid to the well, please?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So we don't see data that says the existing program is the right thing to do, yet this bill would expand and extend, both in scope and in time frame, what is going on in an unproven program. So we are making something bigger and longer that has no real proof that it's doing what we need to do. I would urge a no vote on this bill.
Representative Fields.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, House Bill 1221 is a very important bill that's designed to engage parents in their kids' school activity. This bill has been in effect for 5 years, and there is a sunset now on this bill. So if we let this bill sunset, we're interfering with the potential of having parents be engaged in their student activities. And I think that would be a horrible tragedy to take place. Basically, what this bill does, you heard that it expands. This is how it expands it. Right now in statute, a parent can take some time off dealing with disciplinary issues, truancy, special education, kinds of counseling, dean visits, and those kinds of things. What we want to do is we wanted to expand it to include positive engagement. So what this bill does now is that you can have time off to attend celebration ceremonies. Let's say your son or your daughter is getting an award. This bill will allow you to take time off so you can be in the audience to witness and to observe your son or your daughter get some kind of recognition. It might be a grandparent as well. So when we talk about I think someone said that this was huge opposition from business. And what we heard in testimony is that 90% of businesses are already doing this. They're already providing flexibility. You also heard someone talk about it's unproven that this is working. But we have 30 years of evidence that demonstrates when you have parent engagement in a student's activities at school, they're more apt to perform better in school. You can Google it, you can look it up. Everyone knows that if a parent is engaged in their student's activity, they're going to be more likely to succeed. They're more likely to graduate. So I'm not quite sure I really understand the resistance here. This is for those parents who may be earning low wages, and there's a sense of fear to ask for time off. And what this bill does, it validates the need for those parents to take some time off so they can support their kids' development and their academic performance. So I do encourage that you vote yes on House Bill 1221.
Representative Lundin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Let me speak to two of the issues raised, but let's start from the basic premise. Do we like parents engaged in their children's education? Absolutely. But based on the previous comments and testimony we heard in committee, parents are already engaged. They have the opportunity. Businesses already acknowledge and realize that their best pathway to success in the future is to have good employees. And to have good employees, they need to provide benefits that give those employees to live the life that they want to live, and that's one that is engaged in their children. As to this question of expansion, there's a substantial expansion in this bill. As it exists currently, it's a K-12 situation. But with regard to what it will become something that reaches into preschool as well. So the pursuit of the ability to go to an academic achievement program or some sort of academic-related program for your child in preschool is what we envision under the expansion of this bill. And as to the time frame, instead of taking a look at it now or sunsetting it 3 years from now, 5 years from now, so we can have a further conversation, this would extend it forever. I continue to urge your opposition to this bill.
Representative Melton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And that's exactly what we need, though, is for more parental involvement, especially during those preschool years. I myself have a 3-year-old, and these years right now where she is developing are so important, and it is so important that parents have the ability to be able to assist their kids in getting the right education and being on the right path. And to do that, that means that it is imperative that employers work with their employees and that employers give their employees the resources and the benefits that they need, especially during these preschool years when your kids are starting to talk and walk and read and write and do all the things that they're going to need in order to be ready for kindergarten, in order to be ready for K through 12. So yes, this is an expansion. It's an important expansion. It's a much needed expansion. So why we're arguing over something that is as basic as making sure that that parents are being able to have the benefits to help their kids during their most vital years makes no sense to me. I ask for an aye vote.
Representative Everett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Melton, absolutely. You should take time off to see your child, maybe every day, and take 2 of your colleagues with you for the rest of the session.
Representative Buckner.
The point of this bill is that all parents aren't afforded that opportunity. The fact is that the reason this bill was there, and we had parents who used the bill to ask for permission to go to their kids' school activities. We broadened those activities to include preschool because we know how important preschool is. We also know how much angst there must be for parents of a 3-year-old to not have the opportunity to see what is happening to their preschool-age child in that program because they can't get off work. Parent engagement is not something that we ought to sunset. Why would we sunset something that we tried for 5 years, And we already have 30 years worth of research that says it's important to the success of students. This is not something that's even debatable at this point about the possibility of parent engaging not having positive impacts. And so what are we doing? Why would we do that? We have parents that don't have leave of any kind who under this bill could ask for unpaid leave to go to their student's school and engage in their child's education experience. It seems like a no-brainer to me.
Representative Thurlow.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, members. I just wanted to speak to this bill from the standpoint of being in a manufacturing business 5 years ago when this bill was first passed. And I can tell you in our plant in Grand Junction, and I would suspect this is true in almost every business that I've ever been involved with or have encountered, is the agreement between the employer and the employee in well-run, good businesses is just exactly that. The employer is interested in the well-being of his team, and the well-being of his team means taking care of his kids, taking care of, everybody has to take care of their kids, their family, and that supports the family, and it's a circular thing. It also supports the business. But here's the problem with making it mandatory in a bill rather than making it a voluntary agreement between the employees and the employer. Nothing, hardly anything in the business world stands on its own. Maybe if you're an outside salesman, you can take an hour off and go to a game or a teacher's conference. But if you're in a manufacturing plant, everything is connected. There's a chain of events, and if you break the chain, you set up a constraint that now you've disrupted things upstream and you've disrupted things downstream. So if one employee that's in the middle of the process can on his own, without engaging in the cooperative process, take an hour or 2 hours off or the rest of the afternoon off and go to a parent-teacher conference, it disrupts that chain. The work that he was going to do now bottlenecks before his machinery, and everything downstream from his machinery comes to a stop. So it can be very detrimental and very costly to the whole organization. The way it works is when that employee has something that he needs to attend to, he calls the guy that's going to be on second shift and backs him up, usually on their own. If it's a cooperative agreement, that happens 99% of the time with the employees, and it's encouraged by management 100% of the time. And that's how it works best, if that kind of transaction is left to the cooperation of the employers and the employees. So I would urge a no vote on this bill. Thank you.
Representative Buckner.
That business concern is addressed specifically in the bill and calls for, gives the employer the right to deny leave when it is impossible for that person to continue their normal business practice. It's already in the bill.
Representative Thurlow.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Buckner. I appreciate that. But my question then, why have the bill? If it's called for that they can refuse the time, why not make it a voluntary cooperation between the employer and the employee?
Representative Winter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Thurlow, I congratulate you on running your business responsibly and professionally with care of families, but unfortunately, many employees within this state are not fortunate enough to work for such companies, and that's why we need this bill, so that every parent and every child has an opportunity for parental involvement. And when we talked about, it's also important to understand that this has consequences on the children as well. You talked about how if you lose one person, it hurts your manufacturing line. If we lose children in elementary school and preschool, they will get in further trouble. They will end up in our prison system. This is a simple way with 30 years of research to set up our
Representative
parents
Winter,
and our
excuse me
children for
for a
success,
second.
and I urge an aye vote.
1 minute, please. Members, let's pay some attention, please, to the speakers at the well. Thank you so much. Take your side conversations off to the side when you can. Representative Thurlow.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, members, one more time, and then I'll go sit down. And Representative Winters, I appreciate that thought. My thought to you is that it works best when it is voluntary, and the best employers that work that way with the best employees will get more of the best employees, and vice versa. So that's the way the market should work, and it works best if the government stays out of it and lets that process work.
Representative Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In committee, we worked in a bipartisan way to address many of the concerns that people are talking about here on the floor this morning. And I believe that the expansion into preschool is something that's, when the bill was originally passed in 2009, we weren't quite as aware of how important preschool is to the early development of our children. And so as in committee, we didn't hear specifically from individual businesses that believed that this was a detriment or an impact on their productivity. And I really do believe that making sure that we have the option for parents to get involved in their individual child's education really is an important matter of state concern here in Colorado. So I encourage our members to vote aye on this. We worked in a bipartisan way to make sure that we didn't move too far away from the original intention of the bill, and I do believe this is for the betterment of our kids' futures and making sure that our parents have the opportunities to get involved on the ground level. So thank you for the sponsors for bringing this forward.
Representative Ransom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As a former teacher, I love the idea of parents being involved. I want parents to come to all of the ceremonies and to all the parent-teacher conferences. We always wanted parents to be involved. As a mom who raised 4 kids as a single mom, trying to go to all of those events was very, very difficult. That being said, I went to the huge majority of them even while working because I negotiated with employers. I would work late and to be able to take time off. And I think mandating the business owners to just allow time at the convenience of the schools is just too hard for businesses to always have to accommodate. And so I urge a no vote on the bill.
Representative Fields.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, this is simple. What you're seeing right now is a demonstration in reference to what people value. And I can tell you that I value kids. I value families. This is not about a business or a manufacturing. This is really about families, and it's about children. We had testimony in committee where we had 2 young girls come, and they talked about how devastating it was to be in school and not to see their parents. And when they didn't see their parents participating in their academic progress, they felt a lower self-esteem. They felt less sense of pride. They felt like their parents didn't care. It was only until they had a better understanding that the mom had to string together 2 or 3 jobs, that she could not make it to some of those activities. This is really about valuing our kids. We say that children are our most important resource. And this is basically what this says. We've done it for 5 years, allowing for parents to take time off to attend student activities. We don't want to see it sunset. We want to see it continue. This is a value. This is a value that we all believe, and I think we have some agreement, that parents should be involved in their students' school activities. And so I would urge a yes vote on House Bill 1221.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And there's no argument that we believe in children and in families and in them being able to participate in school functions and other functions. Where the difference is, I guess, is that this is just an overreach of government. It increases government, and this should be between the employer and the employee. And I urge no vote on this bill.
Representative Buckner.
I want to try and simplify this discussion a little more. Essentially, it's, do we want the parents from preschool through 12th grade to have the availability, to be guaranteed the availability of taking leave in order to participate in their child's education experience? And my answer to that is yes. That means that I would hold that value higher than the value that says that businesses ought to have the right to decide whether or not parents should be allowed to be engaged in their students' education experience. There are really effective guardrails put on this. But it comes down to, is the right of parents to participate in their and be engaged in their child's education experience a higher held value than whether or not businesses have the right to decide that for the parent? And so if you believe that businesses have the right to decide that themselves and that parent engagement should not be guaranteed to all parents, then you should vote no on this bill. If you believe that all parents should be guaranteed the right to be engaged in their child's education, that it's a benefit to our society, it's a benefit to our children, then you should vote yes. And you have to make a decision about which of those values you hold to be more evident. We have criticized parents for not being engaged in their child's education and said to them that that's the reason their kids don't do well in school. And that's a commonly held criticism of parents, poor parents and parents of color. And so saying to them that we value the right of businesses to make that determination more than we value the right of them to be engaged in their students' educational experience means that you value that more than the education experience. That's a decision you have to make.
Representative Navarro.
Thank you. And as a former teacher, I was a teacher at Los Animas High School. When we had teacher conferences, we offered 2-day parent-teacher conferences from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Those teachers were there for 12 hours for 2 days in a row to allow those working parents to come and be engaged in those conferences. My children's school has an open door policy. I can go into that school any time of day that I want to and take part in that classroom activity, regardless if it's watching a math lesson being taught, if it's helping proofreading, writing for second graders, if it's helping reading groups. I still have that ability to be here on Friday and work, and if I can get home before 3:15 and take 15 minutes part of my child's day and the last 15 minutes of that day, that means the world to her and to me to still be able to be engaged and stand up for parents who are working, and they're working very hard. But we do what we have to do, and we take the opportunities that we have as parents to be engaged in our student activities, in our students' lives, in our kids' lives, in our nieces and nephews. That's what our job is as a parent and as a family member, to be engaged. We don't need government to tell us when and where it's allowed. Thank you.
Representative McCann.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to mention one thing. When I was practicing law, I was able to juggle my schedule a little bit when my kids had activities in their preschools or in their schools. But I remember thinking to myself that my secretary had children, and she was not able to do that, given the way the law firm was set up in terms of requirements for the staff to be present at all times. And so I began to think about, you know, those of us that may be in positions where we have the flexibility to take off an hour or 2 hours, and we can adjust our schedules to do that. We can do that without causing any problem to our work. We can work later at night. We can, you know, for lawyers, you have to bill hours, so you can work those hours at different times of the day. I understand that's an unusual situation, but I think many times those at the upper levels have much more flexibility with their schedules than those at the lower level. And it really struck me that, you know, I could juggle my schedule, but many of our staff members weren't able to do that. And it seemed really inappropriate to me that I could go to my kids' play at school or parent-teacher conference, but my staff was not able to do that. So that's the reason that I think this bill is so important, because it really helps level the playing field for people who really want to spend time with their children. So I would urge, and I vote on this bill.
Representative Rupe.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And as you can tell, this really means something to me when I want to say something and I have a hard time talking. You know, I was a single mom and I worked for people. I didn't always have a business. And I had to actually go to my employer and say, hey, listen, I need a little time off. How can we work this out? And we would work out an arrangement so that I could go and be at my student's event or my son or my daughter's event. And this was 20, 30 years ago. And that still holds true. You can still do this. You know, and I've worked several different jobs and different shifts. And I've had to actually go in and say, hey, a fellow worker and my supervisor, can I switch my shifts because I want to be at my daughter's recital or my son's event? And they would work with me. So I think I agree with Representative Fields and Representative Buckner on what the thought process is here, but I don't agree on who we're talking about. It's not that businesses are not willing to accommodate. I think they're employees, but really what we're trying to encourage are parents to get involved with their children and using our businesses as the mechanism to make that happen. And yet, even if we allow businesses or we mandate businesses to do this, it does not change the fact that parents may or may not want to be engaged with their children. I would urge a no vote simply because we're not making a difference in how parents perceive their children and their importance in their life. We are simply making it possible through business, which they will already do. So thank you.
Representative Salazar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as an owner of a small business, we have 7 employees, and we have adopted, probably because of our cultural upbringing, we have adopted a families first policy in our firm, which means that, just as I said, families come first. If an employee needs to take time off to go to a child's school for whatever reason, family comes first. If they have to take a child to the doctor, have to take care of a parent, family comes first. And when you adopt a family first attitude in your law firm or wherever you're at, then guess what? Just like families, you figure it out, don't you? You figure out how you're gonna make things work for that day or for that hour, for the couple hours. And not everybody has the privilege of being able to just leave work and go to the school for 15 minutes. Not all schools operate the same either. Some schools, they schedule a block period of time, and that's the only time that you can go and meet with them. And guess what? There are other working parents too. And when you have other working parents who are taking up those parts of the schedule, sometimes all you're left with is 10 o'clock to 10:30. And you need to have that flexibility. And this is a good bill because it's a family's first bill. And businesses figure it out if they are family friendly. I ask for a yes vote on House Bill 1221.
Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Those of you that were in this chamber prior to this particular General Assembly, that were in this House, you remember that where I'm seated was where Representative Bob Gardner sat. So those of you that were here recall that he'd get up here and get to bobbing, and my name's not Jim Bob, so you can relax a little bit on that part, okay? We had considerable discussion about this bill in committee, and I thank the sponsors for bringing it, because the process is working. That's why they're here. We're having the discussion. And have no doubt, folks, on either side of the aisle of the commitment to kids that's here. I mean, just between Representative Buckner and I, you're looking at 80 years. I mean, not either one of us that old yet, but combined experience in education. We have commitment to kids on both sides of this aisle. That's not a question. One of the focuses of the discussion was the fact that the business side was not included in this new bill. NFIB and Casey were both key participants in the original bill, House Bill 09-1057, and they weren't at the table this time. And the original bill seemed to be working in the context that it was set up. So notwithstanding the fact that business was not included in this conversation, let's talk about the expanded bill. The fact of the matter is, House Bill 15-1221 would not have been a topic of discussion if it was not for the sunset. We talked about it in committee, and it was pointed out, well, we could have talked about that last year. We could have talked about it 2 years ago. We could have talked about it 4 years ago. Why didn't we? It seemed to be working. The merits or shortcomings of that bill would not be discussed today if it weren't for the sunset clause. If there was a problem with the original bill, why wasn't it brought to light before? Why is it being brought to light now? Sunset. That's the answer. Colleagues, are you starting to see a pattern? Sunset, sunset, sunset. A sunset clause is critical to this bill. No matter which side you come down on, whether you agree with the bill or you disagree with the bill, a sunset is critical simply because the discussion won't take place without the sunset. Now we're talking about an expanded bill and saying it must be perfect, so we won't need to sunset it. Therefore, Madam Chair, I would move L004 and ask that it be displayed on the screen.
Amendment L004 is properly displayed before us. Please proceed. Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. L004 is simple. It's a sunset. Same sunset that the original bill that was the father of this bill had in it. It's a sunset. In 5 years, we'll be back here talking about how did we do on this bill? How did we do on 1221? Is it working? Isn't it working? Do we need to expand it? Do we need to contract it? That's what it's designed to do. The sunset piece of this, folks, is pretty simple. A sunset's not designed to eliminate a bill. It's simply designed to evaluate a bill. And I contend, and it's my perspective, that here in this chamber, legislation without evaluation is inviting poor legislation. I would ask for an aye vote on this amendment.
System Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I rise in opposition to Amendment L004. Representative Wilson, I'll tell you the same thing on the floor that I told you in committee. If you wanted more success with the sunset, the substitute motion should have been to finance. The reality here, members, the reality here is that the sunsets cut both ways. Yes, I agree, Representative Wilson, it's an opportunity to come back and revisit this section of the statute and see if it's working. The other way that sunsets are viewed, though, is basically saying we only value parent participation. We only think parents should have this leave for the next 5 years. If this is a universal value, if we truly value parents being involved in their child's education and having the space to be able to request from their employer that involvement in their child's education, if we truly believe that to be a universal value, then we don't need a sunset. Because it means we value it not just for the next 5 years, but enough to say that this is law in Colorado indefinitely. I ask for a no vote on this amendment.
Representative Lundin, Representative Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Representative Marino, for that political process little barb you put in there. I appreciate that. I'm not politically astute, never planned to be, so I'm not. I just look at common sense. I don't understand the opposition. The sunset worked well before. In fact, Representative Marino, had there not been a sunset on 1097, the same bill would have been in the same place today. The reason why it came up was because there was a sunset and it was no longer going to be in effect unless we addressed it. It worked well before. Why won't it work well now? We changed the bill. We changed the bill. And strangely enough, Representative Fields, I think there's some good changes in it. Okay? But I don't happen to think it's perfect because we haven't tried it yet. So let's check and see if it is indeed perfect, then we will renew it. If it's not, we'll review it. Sunsets keep bills on our radar, colleagues. Most of the bills we are passing in this chamber this year will never be addressed again because there's no sunset. They just go in the big books that we've got piled over here, and once in a while we go over there to see if we can find something that we pass some other time. Why would we not want to revisit this bill in 5 years to see if it's working for parents and for business? That's not a barb, Representative Moreno. That's just a common sense question.
Representative Lundin.
To the amendment, Representative Wilson, thank you for bringing this amendment to sunset. One of the issues that came up in the committee was the absence of data. There really didn't seem to be data. Parents weren't needing this, parents weren't using this, and part of the argument was they weren't aware of it. So this bill, as crafted, now has requirements for notifications. But the best way to notify people is to, in fact, have a conversation about the situation, which is exactly what's happening now because of the sunset. So I argue in favor of this amendment, although I continue to oppose the bill based on the fact there is inadequate data to prove that it is necessary. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Representative Everett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And we heard in testimony also, and this is to the sunset provision, is that after this bill was passed, which is HB 09-1057, that virtually, and this is from the Mountain States Employers Council and Colorado Association of Commerce and Industry, that virtually all employers provide leave for employees for school activities. So with the sunset provision, you know, we may be able to go from virtually all to all. So why don't we have the sunset provision in? Because the original law was working as written. Why don't we keep what's working? We don't need new legislation for this, and I urge an aye vote on the sunset amendment.
Is there further discussion on Amendment L004? Representative Court. Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L004. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. The noes have it. The amendment is lost. To the bill.
I'm asking for an aye vote on the bill, please.
Is there Assistant Minority Leader Lawrence?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I heard a few minutes ago from one of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle that businesses will figure this out. And that's exactly what they're doing today. They're figuring this out. They don't need the legislature mandating corporate policy. As a mother of 2 children, if I had activities that I wanted to attend for my kids, whether it was preschool, grade school, middle school, high school, college, thank goodness I'm done writing checks for all of that, I could go to my employer and talk to them and work it out. And that's exactly what my problem is with this bill, is we we tend to come into this building and decide that we know better than anybody else in this state. And I think we could have a lot of conversations with people inside business offices, those people running those businesses and setting their own policies on how they want to deal with this. And for the most part, they're doing a really good job. If a parent comes to them and they want to have leave to go to a child's activity, what I'm hearing is the vast majority of them allow it. But again, what I heard was businesses figure this out. And that's exactly what is going on in the workplace today. I don't think we need to have the legislature inserting itself in personnel policies in private companies. If the state wants to do that, that's one thing. But for a private company to be told exactly how they should manage their personnel by the people sitting in this building, I think that's a little bit of an overreach. So I would ask for a no vote on this bill.
Is there further discussion on House Bill 1221? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1221. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1221 passes. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of Senate Bill 55.
Senate Bill 55 by Senator Hodge, also Representatives Arndt and Becker J, concerning state engineered administration of tailwater ditches.
Representative Becker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, this is a simple water bill, which after the last bill, this actually does look like a simple bill. This is a tailwater bill. Oh, sorry, Madam. I was just going to talk because I thought I was going to let you. Madam Chair, I move Senate Bill 55.
To the bill.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Members, this is the tailwater bill that came over from the Senate. This actually is just continuing with the way Colorado law has been working. It allows a ditch company to continue to regulate their own ditch as long as it's within a decree. Within their decree, I ask for an aye vote.
So do I. Is there further discussion on Senate Bill 55? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 55. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 55 passes. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1244.
House Bill 1244 by Representative Singer Nordberg, all Senators John and Lundberg, concerning the ability of members of a club licensed under the Colorado Liquor Code to remove from the club a resealed container of partially consumed vinous liquor purchased at the club. Well, it's supposed to be from when I start reading. Oh, all right.
Representative Nordberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move House Bill 1244. There's no committee report.
Is there further discussion on House Bill 1244? What's happening? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1244. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. House Bill 1244 passes. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of Senate Bill 49.
Senate Bill 49 by Senator Martinez-Umenick, also Representative Kaiser, concerning the vesting of title of real estate and a grantee that as an entity that has not yet been formed once the entity has been formed.
Representative Kaiser.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 1549.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 49? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 49. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 49 is passed. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of Senate Bill 53.
Senate Bill 53 by Senator Aguilar, also Representatives McCann and Lontine, concerning the ability to furnish the supply of emergency drugs for purposes of treating individuals who may experience an opiate-related drug overdose event.
Representative McCann.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill, I move Senate Bill 53. There is no committee report, is there? No. I move Senate Bill 53.
Is there any further? Representative McCann.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, this is a great bill that will make a drug called naloxone more readily available to people who live with or may be working with those who might suffer drug overdose. Any narcotic drug overdose, this drug, naloxone, reverses the impact of that overdose and actually ends up saving someone's life because it stimulates them to begin breathing again for a short time, and then medical care can take over. It's, I call it the wonder drug because it has no negative impact. So this bill will increase the access to this terrific antidote to narcotic overdose, so I would ask for an aye vote.
Representative Lontine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Please support this bill. It's a great bill that saves people's lives, and please support it.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 53? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 53. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 53 is passed. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of Senate Bill 2.
Senate Bill 2 by Senator Roberts, House Representative Brown, concerning extension of the date by which the Executive Director of the Department of Public Safety must submit to the Joint Budget Committee a report regarding statewide radio communications.
Representative Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I would move Senate Bill 2. There is no committee report.
Okay, to the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill just gives a study committee that was passed in Senate Bill 14-127 just a little more time to get their job done. It moves the date from December 31st, 14 to June 30th, 2015. Real simple bill. I'd ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 2? Seeing none, the question before us is the passage of Senate Bill 2. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 2 passes. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of Senate Bill 43.
Senate Bill 43 by Senator Heath, also Representative Pabon, concerning clarifying changes to the Prosecution Fellowship Program.
Speaker Pro Tem Pabon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move Senate Bill 43. There is no committee report.
To the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, this is a very simple bill. It changes the concept of having those fellows that we approved last year as employees of the District Attorney's Council to making them independent contractors. Pass that of judiciary unanimously. Ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 43? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Senate Bill 43. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Senate Bill 43 passes. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Bill 1114.
House Bill 1114 by Representative Sane, also Senator Woods and Ulibarri, concerning probation and assistance by the state, including but not limited to any member of the Colorado National Guard serving in his or her official capacity with enforcement of certain federal laws relating to investigation, prosecution, and detention of individuals that were initially enacted in the Federal National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2012.
Nice.
Woo! Wow.
Representative Sane.
Thank you. I move House Bill 151114.
To the bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to move Amendment L007, ask it be properly displayed. Yes. Oh, well done. Now you have it.
Amendment L007 is properly displayed before us. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to substitute that amendment with L0115 and ask that it be properly displayed. I move such to Amendment L0115 and ask that it be properly displayed.
This is the the wrong amendment.
Oh. Yeah, 15. 15's right.
To the substitute amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Terry, you're up.
Representative Carver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I offer Amendment L013 to Amendment L015. I move Amendment L013, which is an amendment to L015.
They have the right passage. You guys have the right one.
If you look on there, see it says L015 up on the screen.
Yes, you got the right one. Okay. I handed you the wrong one.
We needed to.
It says L015, but she says L013.
No, this is correct.
No, she said.
This is correct.
It's
No, it says 105 on there.
The committee will stand in a brief recess. The committee will come back to order. L013 is properly displayed before us. It is an amendment to the substitute amendment L015 to L013. Representative Carver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At this time, I would like to speak to both the substitute amendment, which is L015, as well as the amendment to Amendment 013, which amends 015.
Representative Carver, excuse me, you can only really speak to Amendment L013 right now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amendment L013 clarifies what the underlying amendment applies to. And so when we get to the discussion of the substitute amendment, we first wanted you to understand that we're talking about state entities, the police, the National Guard, et cetera, and a very specific prohibition that they have not to aid in the indefinite military detention under NDAA.
Representative Ryden.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I question if this fits under the title.
Ask the chair for a title ruling.
I ask the chair for a title ruling.
Members, the committee will be in a brief recess while we decide whether or not it fits in the title. come back to order. The chair has ruled that L013 does fit under the title to L013. Representative Carver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In further talking about Amendment L013, which amends the substitute amendment L015, I would just ask my colleagues, and you'll see this language when we get to the substitute amendment, is this prohibition is very specific that for these employees listed in L013, those state employees, if the federal government has said that they are going to invoke indefinite military detention under the National Defense Authorization Act, sections 1021 and 1022, if the government, federal government, has made that official determination, then at that point, we are telling the state agencies and their employees, you are not to assist in that indefinite military detention because we believe there are constitutional issues involved in that action. The National Guard has an exception where they're not subject to this prohibition if they are acting pursuant to orders from a higher authority or they are acting under what's called Title 10 orders. And that means that the federal government has called up the Guard unit or the Guard members, has put them under federal authority, and has ordered them to go do a specific task. So if that's what the Guard member is doing, they're carrying out this federal mission, they're not subject to the prohibition. We wanted to make sure that the Guard members would not be in a position of being under this state prohibition not to do this, but under federal orders to do it. So that is the nature of Amendment 013, defining the category of agencies and employees who are subject to this prohibition, amending the substitute amendment L015, which contains the prohibition, which again only kicks in if the federal government has made an official determination, probably through Department of Justice, that a specific individual is now going to be subject to indefinite military detention under the authority of NDAA 1021 or 1022. So the language in the original bill that talks about individuals being prosecuted for violation, that language is struck. That language is gone. It is not in the substitute amendment L015.
Is there further discussion on Amendment L013? Representative Kagan.
So, Representative Carver, if L015 were passed without L013 amending it, would there still or would there not still be this exception for those agencies to cooperate in cases where they've been deputized or in cases where they've had orders from their superiors within the organization?
Representative Carver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, because that exception for the National Guard members is contained in the substitute amendment L015, that again you have the prohibition, which only kicks in with the federal determination that they're invoking this section of NDAA, and then the exception for the guard not being subject to the prohibition if they are acting pursuant to orders from a higher authority as part of their mission, or they are under Title 10 and have been federalized.
Is there further discussion on Amendment L013? Representative Ryden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I just want to say that I think it's pretty obvious that this whole process has become very, very complicated and convoluted. I think Representative Carver may be the only person in the room who actually really understands what's happening here. And I just think the whole process really needs to start over, like the good old pie crust we talked about earlier. And I urge a no vote on this amendment.
Representative Lebsack.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a clarifying amendment. This makes the bill better. It allows folks to get closer to a yes vote. This is a solid amendment. This is about indefinitely detaining American citizens and Colorado citizens. This amendment's a good amendment. Let's vote yes on this amendment.
We're going to take Representative Sane.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I urge an aye vote. This is pretty self-explanatory. We don't have to be necessarily JAG lawyers to understand this. This basically just covers all the agencies that had raised an objection saying, just in case I don't know that I'm doing an investigation or it turns into it later, this covers them. So that's what we were intending to do. I urge a yes vote.
Members, we're going to take just a really brief recess. Members, the committee will come back to order. Is there further discussion on Amendment L013? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L013. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. The ayes have it. Amendment L013 is adopted. Thank you. To Amendment L015. Representative Carver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The substitute amendment L015. Again, the first section contains the language of the prohibition. And it simply says that the state agencies and their employees shall not participate in indefinite military detention. The second section says, and that only applies once there's been an official determination that that's what they're going to do as a particular person. And then the next section is the carve out for the Guard where the prohibition would not apply. So I would urge a yes vote on the substitute amendment.
Is there further discussion on Amendment L015? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of Amendment L015. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. No. The amendment is adopted. To the bill. Representative Neville.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, as someone who's served in the armed forces and been to Iraq and deployed to fight terror, I urge a yes vote on this because most importantly, when I served, I took an oath to the Constitution just like we all did. And to me, that is the most important thing. And this bill reaffirms citizens' constitutional rights to a trial if they are detained under these federal acts and prohibits the state aid from aiding in those indefinite unconstitutional detentions. So for those reasons, I please urge a yes vote. Let's reaffirm the oaths that we all took.
Representative Klingenschmidt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also urge a yes vote on this bill. We all, as Representative Neville said, took an oath to support and defend the Constitution, which says in Article 1, Section 9, the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless in cases of rebellion or invasion, the public safety may require it. So barring no rebellion or invasion, I have some concerns about the NDAA as it was drafted in 2012. And there was maybe a fix that was proposed and passed in 2013, which says that this should not be construed to deny the availability of a writ of habeas corpus inside the United States. Well, the question of inside the United States leaves open the possibility that Americans could be detained either outside the United States or could be transferred outside of the United States. And so the fix in 2013 did not resolve the underlying problem that was created in 2012. So for those reasons, I think we need to stand with our Colorado National Guard and make sure they are not jeopardized by orders that would require them perhaps to violate the Constitution. And for those reasons, I urge a yes vote with my friend Representative Salazar, who I believe is a co-sponsor. Thank you.
Representative Kagan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I urge a no vote on House Bill 1114. We've heard from members that failure of this bill would, in certain circumstances, require Colorado National Guard and other actors in Colorado to deprive U.S. citizens of their constitutional rights by detaining them without trial. We have heard that, but I submit to you, members, that is patently not true. It would not require the National Guard to cooperate in detaining U.S. citizens of their rights to trial. In fact, the very question has already been litigated, and the Second Circuit, in the case of Hedges versus Obama, the Second Circuit examined this particular question, and it concluded that the requirement to detain a person under military custody does not extend to United States citizens or lawful resident aliens on the basis of conduct taking place within the United States. And the fact of the matter is that this issue has been litigated and decided. This military authorization and sections 1021 and 1022, these two sections of federal law do not put U.S. citizens at risk of being detained. And therefore, it is not necessary to prohibit Colorado's National Guard from cooperating in these operations. These operations are designed to detain terrorists who are not U.S. citizens. And that has been made very clear both in the statute and in the Second Circuit's opinion in Hedges versus Obama. So, since we are not protecting the constitutional rights of Coloradans by passing this bill, let's turn to whether or not it is a good idea generally to prohibit the National Guard from cooperating with the federal government. When some of them are under orders to do so, some of them have been deputized to do so, and all of them are sworn to uphold the constitutions of the United States and the state of Colorado. Should we be passing prohibitions prohibiting cooperation between our state and our nation? That is the underlying question. And you must do that, I submit, members, only under a very, very heavy burden of saying I have to set our two states apart, the state of the United States and the state of Colorado. I have to put them at loggerheads because constitutional rights are at stake. They are not. The court has said they are not. The statute says they are not. And let's not go down this path of setting those two state entities at loggerheads for no reason whatsoever. Please vote no on this bill.
Representative Salazar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe I should have a Representative Gardner moment. Members! Members! Good, now I got your attention. So, I wanted to read Hedges versus Obama because I'm just not going to have anybody give me some points on it without reading it myself. There were issues in this case. Ultimately, the court decided that the NDAA doesn't apply to citizens. However, the court was very careful to note that there was a compromised amendment where Senator Feinstein noted that the compromised amendment was essentially offered to declare a truce to provide that Section 103(1) of this bill does not change existing law, whichever side view is the correct one. So the sponsors can read Hamdi and other authorities broadly, and opponents can read it more narrowly, and this bill does not endorse other side's interpretation, but leaves it to the courts to decide. Then the court goes on to note, rather, Section 1021E, which would be the amendment that Senator Feinstein offered, provides that it just does not speak one way or the other. It just does not speak one way or the other to the government's authority to detain citizens. lawful residents, aliens, or any other persons captured or arrested in the United States. These are the judge's words. It does not speak one way or the other. The judges also said, we recognize that Section 1021 perhaps could have been drafted in a way that would have made this clearer, and that the absence of any reference to American citizens in Section 1021B by the district court strayed on this case. We should be concerned that the NDAA does not speak about it one way or the other. That is the whole purpose for this bill. Now, here's an important point. Representative Kagan is right. We shouldn't be at loggerheads with the federal government. We should be in cooperation with the federal government. This is true. But what happens when the National Guard or the state government doesn't know that they're not acting in conformance with the Constitution? Here's a case in point. During committee, I asked a simple question, fairly simple question. I asked one of the department heads, does the federal government tell you when they're detaining someone under the NDAA? And this was the response. We never know what we're operating under when the government asks us to do something. We never know what we are operating under when the federal government asks us to do something. That should prove a chilling effect upon you. When the state of Colorado is asked to do something on behalf of the federal government, but the federal government doesn't tell the state of Colorado what we're operating under, that should be a chilling effect for you. That doesn't mean that we're at loggerheads. It means that we don't know. That's why this bill is important. The ACLU and conservative organizations find a wraparound on this. I am in favor of this bill for the simple fact that I want to know. Our militia is organized under our Constitution. Look at it. It's Article 17, Section 1. That is our Constitution. It is our militia. That is our National Guard. And only in 2 instances can it be preempted by the government, one of them being Article 10. And if Article 10 has not been invoked, if our National Guard has not been militarized, then it is ours. And when it is ours, we should know exactly what our militia is doing or what our government is doing, and not rely upon the federal government to just tell us to do something without providing us explanation. That is why this bill is important. I ask for a yes vote on House Bill 1114.
Representative Fields.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I am a strong no vote on House Bill 1114 for one simple reason, because I feel that this is a direct attack as it relates to making sure that our law enforcement is cooperating in a way that will keep us safe. So what this bill will do, it will mean that, that the state patrol, the Colorado National Guard, will not be allowed to intervene and to help. And we rely on interagencies to support law enforcement. We had a case in Aurora where someone bought some chemicals from a beauty supply store. They were going to use those chemicals to do something horrible in Washington, D.C. or New York. But because this person was detained and stopped, they were able to prevent a serious incident from happening. I don't know of a situation, I don't know if the sponsors can share a situation where we have detained an American citizen. So members, I do urge a no vote on House Bill 1114.
Representative Carver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, may I have your approval to display L015, the language of that on the screen? The substitute amendment, L015.
Please display the amendment. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's typically in the discretion of the Majority Leader to determine when this would be displayed. And so, Representative Carver, I don't think it's necessary to put the amendment up there again. The amendment has already passed at this point, and it's not a substitute amendment, but we'll talk about that from a rules perspective later. I just am not sure it's necessary to do that. We are to the bill. There's already been a lot of confusion on this piece of legislation and some of the amendments that have been put onto it. So to avoid additional confusion, let's just talk to the bill as it is currently amended.
Thank you, Madam Majority Leader. Representative Carver.
Madam Chair, thank you. Apologies to the Majority Leader for not following the proper procedure. I just wanted to remind the members that the language of the bill that we're now voting on, with regards to the point that Representative Kagan made about Guard members being at loggerheads with the federal military, the language of the bill as amended makes it so that there is no situation at all where they could be at loggerheads. If members of the Colorado Guard are in any way in their cooperation with any task force, any involvement with the federal government at all, and this issue of indefinite military detention now has come up, the language of the bill as amended makes it clear that this prohibition does not apply to those Guard members. If they are acting pursuant to orders, if they are in or if they are in Title X status. So in every situation possible where the Guard member is acting in cooperation with the federal government, and this indefinite military detention issue has now come up, they are exempt from the prohibition. They will never face a conflict between this prohibition in state law and their duties in working with the federal government. So that's the first point. The second point is to Representative Fields' concern about the state police. Because of the way we narrowed this bill as amended, all the investigation, all the police work, all the action on civilian side that our state police could possibly be involved in, this prohibition does not kick in except at the point, which is at the very end of the process. At the very end of the process, when the investigation is done, the intelligence is done. Quite frankly, they've already taken the person into custody, okay, in some form or fashion. All of that is done. This prohibition only kicks in when the federal government, Department of Justice actually, issues a determination that they are going to invoke indefinite military detention under 1021 or 1022. It's only at that point that the prohibition kicks in. And so at that point, any possible role or involvement, the prohibition is only applying from that point on. So I don't believe it impacts the good cooperative relations that we have with state authorities or with the Guard. And I would urge support of the bill.
Representative Vigil.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise in opposition to this bill, and here's why. As a former law enforcement officer, peace officer, and the programs that they have, like the kayak program. This bill endangers those programs because it creates unsurety or insecurity of those programs. It creates insecurity for those individuals going out in the field to do their job properly because they don't really have an understanding of what may happen or may not happen. So just the problem of not unknowing, not understanding, and not really feeling sure of what your orders are and what the consequences may be will chill, and I repeat, will chill the performance of those law enforcement officers, causing them to probably second guess stuff, probably cost them all kinds of different thoughts. And, you know, they assure them stuff, and then they come back later on and say, well, I'm sorry, but that's the law, you know? We don't know that. It applies to all law enforcement officers. It applies to all state agencies. And so this is a very, very dangerous step we're taking here in providing insecurity for our law enforcement folks down there. Please protect our law enforcement people in the state of Colorado, our Colorado National Guard, by not giving them the insecurity that they're going to face for sure. So with that, I rise in opposition to this bill.
Representative Lebsack. Representative Sias.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As a former active duty member of the military and a current member of the Air National Guard, who has been involved in apprehension of terrorists in foreign contexts, I was initially concerned about some of the aspects in this bill with regard to National Guard members and members of law enforcement. Specifically, I did not want to see a situation in which an individual member of law enforcement or the National Guard could find themselves in the untenable position of being both given a lawful order and subject to criminal penalties under the laws of the state of Colorado. However, the amendments that Representative Sane, Representative Carver have worked on, and as this bill now stands, my concerns have been addressed, and I believe the fundamental premise is this, which is that the state of Colorado should not be participating in the indefinite detention of United States citizens is satisfied, and I urge support of this bill.
Representative Ryden.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I will not speak at length here. I think we've had some really good arguments from Representative Kagan, Representative Fields, Representative Vigil. They've really stated almost all of my concerns. Members, when we disagree with something Congress has done, we generally do a resolution, and we address that, and we ask them to either change what they've done or to do something new. That's where something like this belongs. It doesn't belong in our statutes that we are prohibiting our own law enforcement members from doing their jobs. And we are asking them every time they stop someone, every time they see trouble, they've got to stop and ask themselves, am I authorized to do this? Am I going to end up being personally liable and tried in court myself? I mean, this is really an awful prospect, and I just hope that you all can understand that what we're doing here today is basically creating legislation at the well. As I said before, I think Representative Carver is the only one in the room who really understands what she's talking about, and I'm not even sure that she has, exhausted the entire subject. And I don't know if we want her riding around in a state patrol cruiser so that she can advise folks, because she may be the only one in the state who would be able to advise them. So I am just asking members to think about how confusing, how complicated, how complex this has all become, not to mention the fact that it really, really sets bad policy for the state going forward. I really urge an aye vote on this bill. Thank you. A no vote. A no vote. A no vote.
I thought you had changed your mind.
Members, when in doubt, just say no.
Is there further discussion on House Bill 1114? Representative Sane.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you so much, members, for your patience. This is such a very important bill. I believe this bill will protect Colorado citizens, our citizens that we represent, from certain provisions in the 2012 NDA, including warrantless search and seizure of person and property, indefinite detention of Colorado citizens without due process and public trial. You may recognize some of these words because they're encapsulated within our 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments of the U.S. Constitution. We took an oath to the U.S. Constitution. The National Guardsmen I've spoke to, the sheriffs I've spoke to, don't want to violate their oath. This bill will help protect them, and especially with the amendments that were added on, will shield them just in case something leads down the road to the NDA investigation. I had I'll close with this. This underscores the need for the bill because some of my conversations with some of the opposition, whom I won't name, but I respect very, very much. However, when you hear some of our folks use words like, I know they're a citizen, but. A citizen, but is not in the Constitution. I am not a citizen, but. I'm not a citizen, but I was born here. I'm not a citizen, but I have guns in my car. I'm not a citizen, but I've got a lot of cash in my car. I'm not a citizen, but anything. We are citizens, and we are guaranteed certain rights in the U.S. Constitution. I urge a yes vote on this bill. Thank you.
Representative McCann.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would urge us to vote no on this bill. I think it's pretty clear that we're all a little bit confused about what the amendment did. I don't have a copy of it, so it's hard for me to know exactly what took place. But I think what we're doing is replacing our state employees, not just the National Guard. This applies to any agency of the state. So we're talking about Parks and Rec rangers and other folks who could be caught in the situation where they are asked to help intervene in a possible terrorist situation. We're asking them to make a decision about whether or not there's a constitutional violation going on. That's why we have courts. People who feel that their constitutional rights have been violated have the right to raise these issues in court. I think it's a bad policy for the state to intervene in the relationship between our state employees and the federal government when we don't really know the circumstances of what they are trying to do. And I am not aware, maybe I've missed it, but I am not aware of any Colorado citizen being detained illegally. Even the American citizens that I'm aware of who have been investigated for terrorism and detained have been found guilty or have been legitimately tried. So I think we don't have any, there's no indication that that our members of our Colorado National Guard or our other state employees are participating in any illegal detentions here in Colorado. So I don't think there's a reason for this bill. I think people have the right to go to court and challenge their constitution if they think their constitutional rights have been violated. I think it puts our employees in a very untenable position of trying to figure out if they should cooperate with the federal government or not cooperate. And I don't think that's fair to our employees. So I would really urge a no vote on this bill.
Representative Sane.
Quickly, one thing only. Even if this law is never used, if this law was never used, it forever changes the relationship of U.S. citizens to their federal government. I urge a yes vote on this bill.
Representative Lebsack.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, this is fairly simple and straightforward. I'm going to be a yes vote because I do not believe that our Colorado citizens should be indefinitely detained. And so it's a fairly easy yes vote for me. Folks on both sides of the spectrum agree. Members on this side of the aisle, the ACLU has this in their top priorities this year. We're going to protect Colorado citizens with a yes vote. Join the ACLU, members, right? And be on the correct side of history. This is a bipartisan bill. Senator Ulibarri in the Senate is a co-prime on this bill. Senator Woods is a co-prime on this bill. It's a bipartisan bill with Representative Neville, myself, Representative Salazar as co-sponsors. Let's vote yes on this bill that's going to keep our citizens from being indefinitely detained.
Is there any further discussion on House Bill 1114? Seeing none, the question before us is the adoption of House Bill 1114, and a division has been called. Sergeants, please inform our members that a division has been called. Members, the question is the adoption of House Bill 1114. A division has been requested. All those in the chamber not entitled to vote, please be seated. All those in favor of House Bill 1114, please stand and remain standing in one place until the vote count is taken. The chair is not in doubt. More than 33 have risen. The bill passes. Assistant Majority Leader Moreno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the committee rise and report.
You've heard the motion. Seeing no objection, the committee will rise and report.
The House will come back to order. Representative Danielson. Oh, excuse me. Mr. Kohler, please read the report of the Committee of the Whole.
Madam Speaker, Committee of the Whole begs leave to report in consideration of the following attached bills being second reading thereof and makes the following recognitions thereon. House Bills 1042 amended, 1114 amended, 1175, 1191 amended, 1197 amended, 1202 amended, 1221 amended, 1244 passed on second reading in order and gross place the calendar for third reading and final passage. Senate Bills 243, 49, 53, 55 passed on second reading in order revised place on the calendar for third reading and final passage.
Representative Danielson. You've heard the motion. Mr. Kohler, please open the machine. There are no amendments, so Mr. Kohler, please open the machine and members proceed to vote. Representative Kagan. Close the machine with 65 ayes, no noes, and no excuse. The report of the Committee of the Whole is adopted. Announcements and introductions. Or Madam Majority Leader, do you want to do your layover now? Okay. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to lay over the balance of the calendar until Monday, March 9th.
The motion is to lay over the balance of the calendar until Monday, March 9th. Seeing no objections, so ordered. Announcements and introductions. Representative Primavera.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Public Health and Human Services will meet in 5 minutes. We've changed the order of the calendar. We will hear Senate Bill 128 first.
Are there further announcements and introductions? Seeing none, members, we're going to read across the desk here. You do not need to remain. We will recess after that, or perhaps even adjourn until Monday at 10 a.m. Thank you. I don't have the, do we have any bills? No, we don't have any. Okay. Reports of committees of reference.
The Committee on Appropriations, after consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following. House Bill 1026 be amended as follows: necessary to be referred to the Committee of the Whole in favor of recommendation. House Bill 1104 be referred to the Committee of the Whole in favor of recommendation. House Bill 1133 be amended as follows: necessary to be referred to the Committee of the Whole in favor of recommendation. House Bill 1149 be amended as follows: necessary to be referred to the Committee of the Whole in favor of recommendation. House Bill 1153 be amended as follows: necessary to be referred to the Committee of the Whole in favor of recommendation. House Bill 1211 be amended as follows: necessary to be referred to the Committee of the Whole in favor of recommendation. House Bill 1217 be amended as follows: necessary to be referred to the Committee of the Whole in favor of recommendation. House Bill 1225 be amended as follows: necessary to be referred to the Committee of the Whole in favor of recommendation. House Bill 1254 be referred to the Committee of the Whole in favor of recommendation. The Committee on Business Affairs and Labor. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following: House Bill 1002 be amended as follows: necessary to be referred to the Committee on Appropriations in favor of recommendation. House Bill 1223 be amended as follows: necessary to be referred to the Committee of the Whole in favor of recommendation. The Committee on Finance. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following: House Bill 1014 be amended as follows: necessary to be referred to the Committee on Appropriations in favor of recommendation. House Bill 1147 be referred favorably to the Committee on Appropriations. Senate Bill 111 be referred to the Committee of the Whole in favor of recommendation. The Committee on Health Insurance and Environment. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following: Senate Bill 71 be referred to the Committee of the Whole in favor of recommendation. Committee on Transportation and Energy. After consideration on the merits, the committee recommends the following: House Bill 1236 be amended as follows: necessary to be referred to the Committee on Finance in favor of recommendation.
Printing report.
Chief Clerk reports following bills.
Printing report printed in the Journal. Message from the Senate.
Madam Speaker, the Senate has done some stuff. Postponed indefinitely. House Bill 10.
Senate report printed in the Journal. Message from the Reviser.
Hereby transmit without comment. Senate Bill 102.
Message from the Reviser printed in the Journal. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the following bills be calendared for Monday, March 9th, beginning with House Bill 1211, Senate Bill 71, House Bill 1104, House Bill 1225, House Bill 1217, House Bill 1026, House Bill 1133, House Bill 1149, House Bill 1153, House Bill 1254, Senate Bill 11-1, House Bill 1223.
Would you please tell Mayor? Would you please tell? You've heard the motion from the majority leader. Is there any objection to calendaring those bills as listed? Seeing none, the majority leader's list will be calendared for Monday. So, announcements and introductions, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I have spoken to the majority leader and the minority, and both were excited to have me not be here on Monday, March 9th. And so I have received permission to be excused. I will be excused that day.
Permission granted to Representative Pabon. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. That is just not true. I am going to miss you so much. Everybody, I am going to miss Representative Pabon. He's not going to be here on Monday, and it makes me so sad that he's not going to be here on Monday. Oh. So have fun while you're gone. And with that, I move that the House stand in recess until later today at 1 p.m.
The motion is for the House to stand in recess until 1 p.m. today. Seeing no objection, so ordered.